locally owned and operated and making money, and that's a hard thing to do in the radio business. But our boss, Mark Dorsey, believes in radio and believes in making it a part of the community, and that's what we do at 550. And for those of you, all you business folks, just let me remind you, radio works. As I mentioned, I'm at St. Louis University, and for those of you who don't know, we have a new basketball coach and a whole new program, and I'll tie this into the breakfast in just a moment. But we have a new basketball coach, Josh Schertz, and star player Robbie Avila, and others that are local guys that are good. They all come in. What's interesting is, I've been doing this a long time, as I pointed out, and Coach Schertz has turned the way we play basketball upside down and looks at completely different data to decide how he's going to play. For instance, 39 years ago was the first year the three-point shot came into college basketball. That was my first year at SLU. So I've seen how it's evolved over the years, but Coach Schertz has taken it to a completely different level. He doesn't believe in the mid-range jump shot. In fact, when they scrimmage and practice, you get no points if you make a two-point mid-range shot. It's all about threes and layups. And that's fine, but then he says the percentages don't even really matter. Now, you can't be horrible. It's volume. It's volume, and not only volume in shots taken, but volume in opportunities, creating more opportunities. Basketball with a shot clock. The sooner you shoot, the math works out that the more opportunities, the more possessions you'll get. And it's just a completely different way to look at the game. And I'm wondering, as we get into our experts today, if there are new ways to look at data because of all the changes we're seeing with the economy, higher, lower, and what's moving forward, and can we continue to evolve and look at data in new ways. We've got a couple of extra things today that we don't normally have. And so first of all, this beautiful venue, who's never been in here before? A lot of you. How many of you have seen a musical or comedy act here? It's an unbelievable venue. I was just here the other night for ZZ Top. It was fantastic. This is the place to see musical and comedy acts. It's unbelievable. When I came out of there, I was looking around though, I couldn't believe that all of us old people still go to concerts. It was not a good look. Anyway, let's get the show rolling here, and I bring up the venue because Michael Staenberg of the Staenberg Group, this is their baby. And the valley and up the hill into the old Chesterfield Mall area, it's all their baby. So please welcome to the stage for extra welcome today, Michael Staenberg.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this wonderful event. Thanks for coming to the factory and Chesterfield. I have a little involvement in Chesterfield. I built the Commons across the street, and I was silly enough to think that I could build an entertainment district across the street, and now I'm even sillier thinking I can build a downtown in where the mall was. A lot of people want to know what I'm thinking about there, and I'm not sure yet. However, demolition has started, and by a year from April, we'll be having it be completely graded. It will have all the infrastructure in roads, ring roads, a park of 3.5 acres, and we'll be ready to see if I can come up with a vision that meets everybody's expectation. And I think it will. We'll have about 2,500 residential units, about 1 million square feet of office, and we'll have about 500,000 square feet of unique retail. So we're really happy with that, and please, everybody's input is important, so if you have some ideas, I get probably 50 to 75 emails a week on ideas, and I'll respond to every one of them because I think it's important to have the community involvement, and I'm proud to be part of that. We're here today to thank Royal Bank for what they do. They're the lender on this project in the district, and my mentor and friend who started Royal Banks was Tommy Green, and I wouldn't be here today without Royal Banks. It's a wonderful bank. They do a nice job. They're very accommodating, not because I was friends with Tommy Green, because they recognize people in the business world. So thank you for coming. It's kind of weird being up here, not seeing a performer, you know, and last week we saw ZZ Top, so I don't think I'm the same as ZZ Top, but thank you for coming out and enjoy the program.
We have one more special presentation before we get to our guest. This is a good one. And to make this presentation, please welcome the President and CEO and my good friend from Royal Banks of Missouri, Mitch Baden. I'm not going anywhere.
Good morning, everybody. Glad you're here. This is a day of celebration for us. Not only are we going to talk about the economy, but this is our 60th anniversary, so we're excited about that. So, thank you. I did some research. There's only 14 banks. I thought there were only 12, but there's only 14 banks that are older than us in the entire state of Missouri. I think that speaks to the legacy of our company. I want to give Bob something. This is your 20th year being our spokesperson. So thank you for all you've done for us and your voice.
Wow.
So thank you. So,
Thank you very much, Mitch, and all the people that I work with at the bank. This is a lovely surprise. It's really an attendance prize, isn't it?
It's not money.
Yeah, okay.
So, no, don't go.
Oh.
We want to take a few seconds. First of all, we have several of our directors here. If our directors would stand up, I think I saw Linda Renner and Matt and Steve Pessin. If you'll stand just a second. And then there are some other our directors I know that are here. If you're here, we appreciate you attending. You know, we get the honor of carrying on the legacy of the guys that started our company, Tom Green, Steve's dad, and so this is great. My colleagues in the back, I congratulate you. It's an honor to be part of this team and to lead this group. So we want to take a second and just show you what our company is really all about. So we've produced a video. I don't know if Katie Carricker is. Where's Katie? Katie produced this. She's our marketing director, and I will take just a few minutes and you can see what our company is all about. So enjoy the program. We're glad you're here and hope to see you next year as well. Have a great day.
Royal Banks of Missouri's story began in 1964 in University City, where a group of local businessmen developed a community bank dedicated to exceptional client service. Forward to 2024, Royal Banks is 17 locations strong and has grown from its roots in St. Louis and has expanded to St. Charles, Illinois, and Northeast Missouri. But one thing has remained true over the past 60 years. Our clients are our top priority.
When I started my business, one of my clients, his first question was, who are you banking with? He recommended 2 different banks. One of those companies was Royal Bank. Immediately within Royal Bank, I'm meeting the CEO. It was really about having that personal relationship and someone who believed in the same vision and who was willing to take the risks and step forward. In 2016, we actually purchased our building downtown, which is our current headquarters. When I pitched it to Royal Bank, they actually full-heartedly supported it and funded us, so not only in construction loans, but permanent loans after. In our first full year here, after we finished construction on this building, we doubled in size in revenue and also in employee count.
In 1980, started with a pickup truck and a shovel and bought this land in '82, and we've been planting here since. I've been with Royal Banks for over 20 years. And most of why I picked Royal was because I wanted to work with a small bank. At that time, they were a lot smaller than now, but they still have that small bank atmosphere and treat you as an individual instead of a corporation. One of the biggest things is their constant inclusion in furthering the foundation my son started with leukemia, called Leukemia 24/7. They've been a proud supporter and constant supporter of the efforts we do there.
Hawthorne Animal Hospital started in 1956, and in 2004, we made the move and we built a new building. We had worked with some other local banks, and when we needed to buy a piece of equipment or needed something out of the ordinary, it wasn't just a simple transaction. It didn't feel like we were that important to them. Royal Banks has always had that can-do attitude. When we have a project or trying to expand, instead of saying no, they say, okay, how do we accomplish or get over this hurdle? And Royal Banks does that for us. I'm proud to work with a local bank and proud to be part of a local, animal hospital.
Well, our great-great-grandfather immigrated from Germany back in 1857, worked and lived in the Alton area for a few years, and then came and settled on this farm in December of 1869. It means a lot that we're still here today, 150 plus years.
When you deal with Royal Banks and Sharon and Don, when you can relate with the people you work with, it just makes life so much simpler. Whenever we have needed any kind of assistance, whether it was purchasing ground or you get a good deal that shows up, they're the people we can go to and talk with, and we can make it work.
Feel like a valued customer to the bank. They're very active in the community. I think it just speaks well and just adds to the trust and pleasure of working with them.
We've been able to grow our farm in our generation. We feel like we're going to be here a while, and with the help of a good bank, I think we can make this work.
Pinebrook Holdings, our holding company, is a financial firm, and Royal has grown with us. Today, we have over 25,000 customers. And our previous bank, which was much larger than Royal is today, came in and said that they had some problems with some of their loans. Their problems were now becoming our problems. And my CPA firm recommended going to Royal Bank. I was able to move very quickly with Royal, a lot faster than any bank. If you have a business, you should go sit down and talk to them. Very open-minded. It's just been a very smooth, not only transition from the other bank, but a pleasure to be with Royal Bank. It's a big difference.
As we look ahead to the next 60 years, Royal Banks of Missouri will remain committed to the core of our mission, being an outstanding partner for our clients to ensure their success and continuing to give back to the neighborhoods we proudly call home. Royal Banks of Missouri, investing in our communities, one client at a time. Happy anniversary, Royal Banks. That's awesome, and well done, Katie. Beautifully shot. Very nice video. All right, let's get into our program. We're going to start off with our staff predictions, and the staff predictions is almost like a staff poll, and we know how accurate polls are every year. That was a joke. It's going to be easy for Bill and the staff to do better than the polls. So let's welcome Bill, Senior Vice President, Treasury Management Director for Royal Banks.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here, and thank you, Bob. We'll get to our predictions in just a moment, but as Bob mentioned, my name is Bill Forsythe, and I'm the Director of Treasury Management here at Royal Banks of Missouri. And it's my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to the 24th Annual Economic Forecast Breakfast. And I'll echo what Bob has said. This venue is unbelievable. If you haven't seen an event here, I strongly encourage you to do so. My wife and I were fortunate enough to see a concert here earlier in the spring. Acoustics were fantastic, and Royal Banks remains the proud corporate sponsor of the factory, and we're delighted to be here again today. It's my pleasure to also welcome back our outstanding panel of economic speakers. You know, regardless of industry, I think we've all experienced some challenging economic conditions over the course of this last year. Everything from geopolitical conflict and ongoing inflationary pressure to prolonged unfavorable interest rate environment for borrowing money. The headwinds have certainly been onerous for all of us. I think the perspective of each of our speakers this morning will help us plan for and navigate the year ahead. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize and thank the members of our board of directors for sharing the vision of our CEO, Mitch Baden, and the rest of our senior management team as we continue to strive to be the best independently owned community bank in every one of the markets we serve. In particular, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to our principal shareholders, Linda and Matt Renner and Steve Pessin. It's their unwavering belief in us that has enabled us to grow and continue to be successful. Thank you guys so much for your support and leadership over the years. Finally, I'd like to also recognize my colleagues, Katie Carricker, Lisa Weeks, and Debbie Brandt, who work tirelessly behind the scenes to make today possible. The three of them do a tremendous job planning events, coordinating all of our meetings, and contributing to our marketing programs. My hat's off to you, ladies. Thank you very much for all you do. In closing, we here at Royal Banks have a tremendous amount to be grateful for. I think that the top of that list, however, is our clients and our business partners and the many other relationships that exist in the room today. Certainly, we wouldn't be standing here celebrating 60 years in business if it wasn't for you. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your business. So let's go ahead and get started with our predictions from last year. As I reviewed these, I was actually pretty impressed with how close we were on a lot of these predictions. And I'm not sure, just hit this, here we go. So yeah, our 2024 predictions last year, you can see what we predicted gas prices. We were a little off here. $3.37 a gallon was the predicted amount, and the actual is $2.94, so we overshot it there just a little bit. Prime rate predicted 7.25. We're today at 7.75, so just a little off, 50 basis points off there too. Still in the ballpark, however, so not bad. Unemployment rate predicted 4.04. Look at that, the actual 4.1, so right on the money there. And then the Dow Jones Industrial Average are predicted 34,047, and the actual is a bit over 44,000, so it outperformed our expectations there. NASDAQ predicted 14,000, a little over 14,000, actual 19. So again, I think, the economy outperformed our expectations and predictions there. And then our annual rate of inflation prediction was 3.55, and surprisingly, it's risen at the number's 2.44. And then last but not least, the presidential party predicted an actual Republicans. So I would remind everybody, if you would, there's a QR code on all your table tents up there. So if you'll scan the QR code so that we can make our predictions for 2025, we'll review them again next year and see how we did. Thank you all again for being here. We appreciate it and enjoy the program.
Our first speaker is a gentleman who I've known a long time, but he's been in the investment industry for over 60 years. Too many awards in the field to count. He speaks all over the place, including places like this. He's published 5 books, supports the community, St. Louis chapter of the Alzheimer's Association, Variety Club, many more. He's been inducted into the St. Louis Amateur Baseball Hall of Fame and the Jewish Sports Hall of Fame. He's interviewed tons of figures like John Ashcroft and Steve Forbes and Bob Dole and Jack Kemp and many, many more. Currently, he's the host of our St. Louis Money Talk radio show. He's been doing it for 38 years, and right now you hear it every Sunday morning on the Big 550 KTRS. That's at 8 a.m. and Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock for the market wrap-up, thought of the day, and the Fox 2 simulcast. That's a lot going on, and you'll see why he can get it done. Please welcome Bob Hardcastle.
Thank you, Ramsey. And thank you for being here today. And thank you, Royal Banks of Missouri, for allowing me to share my views with you today on the investment markets, the metals markets, and the energy markets. It's the only thing I have to remember is green is go and red is back. So I hope I don't have to push any red. So let's see what we got up there. Okay, well, that's good. I'm here. All right, so I want to share something with you about a disclosure, company disclosure. What a company disclosure means is your broker-dealer, in this case, Berthel Fisher, does or doesn't necessarily agree with what I'm saying, which means Royal Banks of Missouri may or may not agree with what I'm going to say, which means you may not agree or agree with what I'm going to say. So that leaves one person in this room that may agree with what I'm saying, and that's me. So let's get going. Before I get into maybe some suggestions, I want to talk about one thing that can throw the stock market off for at least a short period of time. And that's a war, and that's something that we call indecision. And we've got a lot of things going on in the world today. Taiwan and China, North Korea, Ukraine and Russia. But the big thing right now that's affecting us, or could really affect us even more, is the Middle East. Right now, no atomic buildings are getting hit. It's kind of on the surface, but nothing really deep. It's terrible what's going on for both cases. But if that breaks out, then what we've seen in the past, and previous results do not guarantee future returns, but what we've seen in the past many times when a war breaks out, market gets hit and then slowly comes back up, maybe sometimes within 30 days, but a short period of time. And a lot of times a war, which is terrible, causes more jobs, more people to go to work, more products to be sold. So again, we want to watch and see what happens. So let's take a look at what we're going to talk about. And one of the things before we go into actual, let's say, ideas, is what happened a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, we had an election. To me, the most important thing about that election is it was over. And we found out about it about 2:30 in the morning that President-elect Trump was going to be the new president. I was worried about it being delayed, running on another week or two, and that could have caused all kinds of problems. But why did the stock market jump up so much? I mean, the next day, the market ran up. And then last week, it ran down. It didn't run down as much as it ran up the week before, but there were a couple reasons, in my opinion, that it ran up. One, President-elect Trump's tax bill, which is supposed to go off the books December 31st of next year, may now not go off the books and may last again as long as his term, because the feeling was he's going to push it out maybe another 4 years. And even though none of us want to pay taxes, we're really in one of the best tax situations we've been in for many, many, many more years. So if we can keep taxes down for another 4 years, that is really going to be good. Another thing that President-elect Trump said was he was going to knock taxes off of Social Security. Well, you know, many of us right now, we're working or we're retired, everything's going great. We've got Social Security coming in if you qualify, and maybe your 401k, your pension plan, everything's great. But there's a lot of people out there who are just skimming by, just getting by, maybe have a part-time job, and if we can get taxes off of Social Security, that will be very, very beneficial to them. So those are just a couple of reasons that I think that the stock market ran up. Now, what happens in the past again, and I have to say it again, previous results do not guarantee future returns, but many times the way the market is going into an election, whether the market pops up from then or it goes down, after a couple weeks, it settles down, maybe gets back to where it was, and if the market was going down beforehand, it continues to go down. If it was going up like we were this year, it continues to go up. So I'm very positive about what's going on the rest of this year, although we don't have much of a year to go. Do you know that in the last year, November, December, January, February, March, May, June, July, August, September, those were all up months. The only months we had down were April and last month, which was down a little bit. So I'm looking for us to end up on maybe not a high at the end of the year, but to make a newer high than we have right now, because we're almost on our highs right now. So what do we invest in? I'm just trying to say, because these fellows up here are going to argue whether they're politicians, whether you're next door neighbor. Let's get along. Let's start talking to each other and maybe say, you know, you've got an idea. Maybe I'll listen rather than my way or the highway. And that's what we've been seeing in the last 4, 8, 12 years, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. So if we're going to look at investments, one of the things that everybody talks about is AI. AI is every place. AI is here in this building. AI is on the phone when you're talking, at the computer, in your office, at home, on television. Wherever it is, it's there. And I can't imagine, I really can't, I can't imagine where we're going to be 5 years from now with AI. I mean, are we even going to own our own automobiles 5 to 10 years from now? Is everything going to be an Uber-like thing where we just push our finger into our ear and the computer says, what do you want? And we say, well, send a car to my house and take me so-and-so. There are so many things coming that AI is going to be so strong on, but, you know, we've been through this before. We've been through this in the 80s, the 90s, 2000. Remember AOL? Where are they? So, I mean, are these companies today that say they're delivery companies or computer companies or automobile companies or mapping companies or watch companies, is that what they really are? No, these big companies are actually AI companies. And it's extremely expensive to be an AI company. So are you going to bet on them? Are they going to still be here 5, 10 years from now? And what else is going to cause AI to either go up or go down? But I'm betting that it's going to be here and it's going to be good. We just have to be very, very careful with this. Okay, President-elect Trump says he wants to bring things back here to the United States. So what about manufacturing? Is that going to improve? You know, we had a couple of companies. In fact, one of the companies is owned by a gentleman who's very, very close now to President-elect Trump. We're going to go down and have some, let's say, some production down in Mexico. And when the tariffs were talked about, they moved back here. So are we going to get the companies in the United States to stay here in the United States? Or we're going to have more production? Manufacturing may be a place to look. Also, aerospace. I mean, we've got to defend ourselves, and we're also defending other countries. Or is aerospace going to be a way that we're going to define ourselves? And what about banking? The banks, the financial institutions, the investment companies. You know, usually when the market goes up, the investment companies do real good. When interest rates go up, sometimes banks don't do very good, but interest rates are coming down. Are they going to be better? Mitch, are you guys going to lower rates pretty soon? What's going on? You know, the Fed's changed rates now twice, and I know Dr. Emmons is going to tell us what's going on in the interest rates. I'm just concerned we don't end up like Mr. Volcker did years gone by, where we lower rates, we raise rates, we lower rates, we raise rates, because I don't see inflation going down. Yeah, I see it at the pumps, but I don't see it at the grocery store. And I mean, or at a restaurant. I mean, what's this fast food is supposed to be cheap? You go get a hamburger and french fries and a soda, and it costs $30. That's not cheap to me. So things have to get better from an inflationary standpoint. And a couple of other things Mr. Trump is saying up there. We look at energy, gas and oil, green, industrial, defense stocks. What about cryptocurrency? Now, I've got to preface this by saying I can't even talk about cryptocurrency. My broker-dealer won't let me say anything about it, but I can say the word. But I can't sell it. I can't talk about it. All I can tell you is the U.S. dollar is backed by the good faith in the American government. It's not backed by gold or silver or platinum or farmland. It's just backed by the good faith in the American government. Cryptocurrency is backed by nothing. And really, the only thing I'm going to say is I can't say anything about it. So you probably know how I feel about it. So what do we do with these things? To me, the three areas that I like better than any, and this may surprise you, but I like protecting the border. I like changing education. Now, how about this one? Protecting the police. I thought the police were supposed to protect us. We've got to protect the police. It has gone on too long that the police are bad guys and bad gals, and they're out protecting us. So you have to say, well, what could we look at? What could we buy? What could we put in our portfolio that will help protect the border or help protect the police? Is it more drones? Is it more ammunition? Is it equipment? Is something they wear? Is it something visual? Find that, fall in love with it, and put it in your investment portfolio. And you know, from an educational standpoint, again, this is my feeling, but I think our education has just gone down and down and down in many aspects. And we're getting away from, to me, the most important thing, and the most important thing is the child, is the student. It's not all this other stuff they're trying to throw at them. What can we do to get our students, get our kids, get our grandkids, get my great-grandkid through a great education? And we've got to make a change because the kids are going to be the ones that spur this country on in the future. So these are areas that I feel really strong about in the future. Another area that I like is, we talked about AI. We just have to watch it closely because it can change so quickly. Is when we were talking about politics earlier, we've got to get these people to talk to each other. Now, you know, everybody says, oh, it's going to be easy. We've got the Republicans got the House, they got the Senate, they're going to get everything done. Remember, the Republicans can't even get along with each other. You got a group out there that won't do anything that the rest of the Republicans want. So it's not going to be as easy to get all these changes done as we think. They're going to have to work together, and I hope they do. So from a standpoint of another investment, the metals markets. Almost every month this year, in fact, every month this year, gold has continued to make a new high every month. And they've brought silver up. And, you know, gold in the past, 2,200 was about as high as it ever gone. Now, 2,200, 23, 24, 25, 26, $2,772 the day before the election. And today we're down $250 lower. Now, how did that happen? Usually when interest rates come down, and they've been coming down, the metals markets come down. No, the dollar comes down and the gold goes up. That's not what's happening. The dollar's going up and the gold is going down. And the silver's going down and the platinum's going down and the palladium's going down. And besides, how do you buy it anyway? Do you buy it in stocks? Do you buy it in ETFs, in mutual funds? Or do you buy the hard product? I love the hard product. I've told you for years that, in fact, I've already purchased. I buy Silver Eagles for all of our family. Now, big deal. They cost $32, $34. But it teaches the family a little bit about value, whether they're going up this year, or they're higher this year than they were last year, or they're lower this year. But I like the hard product. Now, I don't like it because the world's going to come to an end and I'm going to go in with a gold eagle that is worth $2,500 and I'm going to buy a loaf of bread, a quart of milk, and a dozen eggs. What am I going to get for change to come back, okay? I'm not buying it for that. I'm buying that to give it to my grandkids, who I'm telling them to give it to their grandkids. I just think it could be a part of your investment portfolio. That leads us to energy. This is really going to be difficult, I think, because what does he say? Drill, baby, drill. And I think we're going to drill, baby, drill, and I think we're going to sell, baby, sell. When President-elect Trump left office, oil prices were $42 a barrel. They're now $68 a barrel. They've been up to $94 a barrel. And I think they're going to be lower, even though we're going to be drilling. Even though the companies, the oil companies, are going to be drilling more rigs, more people, more sales. So I think they can make more money than they've been making. But I don't think that the oil prices are going to go higher because I think we're going to be selling and drilling more. He wants to be the #1 exporter in the world like we were before, and I think he's going to try to achieve it. So where we have the oil companies maybe going up in price, no one knows for sure, we might have the oil prices moving lower. Now, will they get down to $42? I don't know. But I don't think they're going to make any more of a new high for a while unless that war breaks out. And if that war breaks out, those oil prices and gas prices could spike up. We could get $68 oil up to above $100 an oil. That could be possible if a war breaks out. So we've got the energy market, and we're going to get green also. They're going to continue with green. But under President Trump, we're going to continue to push to get the oil out of the ground and sell it and bring in more money to the United States. So what does all this mean? I believe that we're going to run up, maybe not run up, but move to new highs before the end of the year. Don't forget, they've got capital gains, we got dividends, everything coming out. You don't have to worry about it if it's in an IRA. But if it's not in an IRA, you got some tax consequences. Talk to your CPAs and find out what's going on there. And then I think even in January, we're going to tend to move up. You know, it's interesting about the stock market. And again, previous results can't guarantee future returns. But in January, if the market's up in January, many times it's up for the year. This year we're up in January. We're up for the year. I think we're going to be up in January this next year. Hopefully we're up for the year. But just about the time President Trump comes in, I believe this slowdown, which we're already seeing, I think we're slowing down. I think just about the time President Trump comes in, we're going to get this slowdown, this maybe recession, whether we're talking about February, March, April, May, somewhere in that time period. And again, trying not to be political, but I have to say this, I don't know if the Democrats are going to want him to be really successful at the beginning or at the end at all anyway. So they may try to do whatever they can to slow things down. And so I think we're going to slow down, but by the middle of the year, I believe that what he's bringing in will start taking place and will start acting. Whether it's talking about the lower oil prices, whether bringing companies back to the United States, whether bringing the inflation down a little bit, if interest rates can continue. So I think the last half of next year will be a good year. I do not believe next year will be as good as this year in the stock market. I still think it's going to be a good year. But what we have to do, again, is research these areas. Research defense, all of the areas we talked about. And I can help you, you can help yourself research. I just can't help you with what? Cybersecurity and things like that. Cryptocurrencies. So again, it's a situation where I think we're going to go into good times, but not as good as this year. So see what we got there. Again, the first half of the year after January may be slow, followed by a good year. But one thing for sure we know, and it hasn't got anything to do with interest rates because Dr. Emmons is going to tell us about interest rates. But one thing that we know is we're going to have some growth, we're going to have some value. For some reason, many times after a presidential election, value outdoes growth. So look at your funds and see if you're in value or growth, and consider maybe doing some fine tuning. You know, in the last week, a lot of people are moving around. Companies are saying you got to move here, you got to move there. It's too early, in my opinion, to make changes. Okay, we got to let this thing settle down. Take a couple weeks, then see what you want to do. Be prepared for changes as of January 1st. But one of the things that we know is going to happen, it's going to be a wild, 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 wild ride, for sure, with President-elect Trump. Anything can happen, and under him, it probably will. But I think it's going to end up being good. We're going to pay less taxes. That's good for the stock market. If it's good for the stock market, it's good for the investor. If it's good for the investor, it's good for us. So I think things are going to be good this next year. From now till the end of the year, I think it's going to be really, really good. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday season. I can't believe it's that time of the year already. I want to thank Royal Banks of Missouri again for allowing me to share my views. I hope right now I'm still not the only person that agrees with my views. But have a wonderful holiday season, and listen to the radio program if you can on the Big 550. I'm on, like Ramsey said, every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. We try to have more fun than all the other kids. Enjoy the holiday. Thanks, Royal Banks of Missouri. Have a great holiday. Thank you very much.
Our next guest, Ron Ameln, is a nationally recognized entrepreneur, author, publisher, and speaker. For the past 30 years, Ron's been helping inspire, educate, and inform small business owners throughout the country. He's the owner and president of SBM, publisher of Small Business, St. Louis Small Business Monthly, and the host of the St. Louis Biz Expo, the largest in the state of Missouri. Please welcome Ron Ameln.
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm certainly honored to be here today talking about the state of small and mid-sized businesses. So today I'm going to talk about a little about where we've come from. I'm going to give the kind of a forecast, an idea of where we may be going next year, and then I'll finish off with a few keys to success for businesses that are looking for growth in 2025. I'm relying on surveys and focus groups from our own readership and from national organizations as well, and surveys from NFIB when we take a look at this. You know, so where have we, let's take a look at where we've been. In my lifetime, I don't think there's been a 4 or 5 year period that's been as bad for business owners as we've just gone through. I mean, we started out in 2020 with COVID, and then that turned into shutdowns, and at one point in 2020 we had over 20% unemployment, and then we had supply chain issues, and then we had inflation that we haven't seen since the 1980s, and interest rates we haven't seen in 25 years. And then the labor market, we had a really, really tight labor market. We had employees quitting at record levels. You know, we had baby boomers retiring like we've never seen before, and it was just several years of really bad circumstances just piling on top of each other. And the fact that businesses made it through this 4 or 5 year period, you should all feel like that's a major accomplishment. And if I was Oprah, I'd have a new car for everybody out there who survived this period, but I'm not, so sorry. So, you know, and as I said, in my lifetime, I'm 56 years old, I can't think of a worse 4 or 5 year period. And, you know, if you think that maybe I'm wrong about that, find me afterwards, because I'd love to talk about it. Maybe this late 70s, early 80s, possibly. But, and I'm 56, so I wasn't around in 1930, even though my kids think I was. So I don't know how it was in the 30s. So, you know, with all of that kind of behind us, I mean, where are we headed? What does 2025 look like? And, you know, if I could mention it, sum it all up in one word, I would say growth. I mean, business owners are looking for growth. They've been through this really difficult period the last 4 or 5 years, and they're looking at growth for 2025. And I've never seen, in the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't seen this type of optimism from business owners. But And really right now, our economy, it's really based on the haves and the have-nots. I mean, if you are a service provider, if you're a service-based company, the last few years haven't been bad. I mean, you've had some growth, and you're looking forward to growth in 2025. If you're a manufacturer or distributor, or you actually make a product, the last few years have been difficult. In fact, you're in a recession right now. But my manufacturing friends tell me that 2025, they're actually looking to get up off the mat, and they expect growth, particularly in the third and fourth quarter. So what are we looking at next year? What is the outlook? Well, if you're waiting to expand and grow, now is definitely the time. Both service providers and manufacturers are looking for growth. And we're not talking growth, the 2018, 2019 type of growth, but we're looking at growth. And companies are planning those strategies. They expect unemployment to be low. Employee retention is less of a concern right now. And in fact, quit rates are back to where they were in like 2015. They expect interest rates to be lower, but we're never going back to the good old days. Inflation rate staying lower, but again, never going back to the good old days. And inflation is still the number one concern for business owners. And inflation has been so bad the last 4 or 5 years that the wrapper 50 cent is now known as 85 cent. That's all right. What do you want for free, right? The labor costs continuing to go up. I talked to a business owner in the construction business yesterday, in fact, and his health care costs are going up 12% for next year, 2025. This year they went up 11%, and those are difficult numbers to absorb. So within this growth, the business owners are also going to have to take on those higher cost of goods and higher labor costs. And because of that, continued efforts to really tamp down those cost of goods. And so, you know, in this growth period, you know, what does that really mean for your business? And I think that's a question that every business needs to ask. Does this mean you're going to expand your teams, add new employees, you know, expand regionally? Are you going to acquire another company? Because now is really the need. There's a need right now to strike. If growth is your strategy, now is the time. Rates are lower, and inflation has stabilized, and so now is really the time. One other thing I do need to mention when in what business owners expect next year is the 20% qualified business income deduction, and it was part of the original Trump tax plan, and those are set to expire at the end of 2025, and that's very important for pass-through entities. It's important for all businesses, but particularly those. And there's probably not a conversation I have with a group of business owners where business owners don't come up to me and talk to me about that. Because it's very important to them that those get extended. And I know a lot of the accountants who are out there are probably already meeting with their customers, talking with them about how they deal with that, because there's going to be that's going to be some pain if those aren't extended. So that's something certainly business owners are looking at. So let's talk about if you're interested in growing your business next year, what are the three real keys for growth? And one is really the financials, and it's, you know, part of the fundamentals of business. I know it's not very sexy, but, you know, bankers always tell me 70% of their clients don't truly understand their financials, and this is a tough era to be in if you don't truly understand your financials. And I've owned a business for 20 years. I've been around businesses for 30 years, and I often find that business owners come in two categories. They're either the top line business owners, and the top line owners would sell their own mothers for an extra $1 million in revenue, right? I mean, they're concerned with just building that top line, and they don't really care about their profits, and maybe they'll look in the checkbook every few weeks and see how things are going, but it's all about building that top line. And then the other owners are the bottom line folks, and they are going to be 10% profit before tax regardless. I mean, they'll fire their entire marketing department even though they'll need them for growth later, and they'll fire employees even though they'll need them for later, because everything is about that bottom line, and they're not really that concerned about top line. And usually I find business owners are either in one of those two camps, and during certain eras that probably works great, but in this era right now with high inflation and high labor costs and high cost of goods, I think you have to be both. I mean, you have to really drive that top line, and you've also got to really work that bottom line as well. And if you want to succeed in the upcoming years, you'll be a business owner that does both of those. As I said, inflation's still the #1 issue for small businesses, and I have to tell you that the politicians lied to everyone. A declining rate of inflation means things are getting more expensive less quickly. It does not mean costs are coming down, because costs are not coming down. And that's going to be the trick with business owners when they're building this growth. They're going to have to do that with, as I said, high labor costs and higher cost of goods. And so that's where that understanding that those numbers come into play. A lot of businesses right now are what I refer to as growing broke. And so what does growing broke mean? It means they're building their top lines, but their bottom lines aren't growing. I mean, their profits are either stagnant or they're falling back. And there's an old saying that I brought my mom to the prom, right? And in business, I think the equivalent is growing broke, because you're doing all this work to grow the top line, but you're doing it all for nothing because the bottom line's not growing. And so, again, the financials are so important, because one thing you don't want to do is grow broke. Another key to success is going to be labor and culture. And the best businesses, they understand that one great employee equals 3 good ones. And they're constantly looking for that good employee, or that great employee. So where we stand with labor right now? Well, it's still a tight labor market, even though it's softening. For every one job opening, we have 0.879 people to fill that job. And 2 years ago, that number was 0.679. So again, it's tight, but it is softening a bit. The best companies are going to continue to build their bench. The quit rate has gone down. It's back to 2015 numbers. So, if you're having a lot of turnover in your business, the problem is you. It's not something that's going on nationwide. Still a major focus on retention. You got to keep those folks, especially with the baby boomers retiring. And leadership is the #1 barrier to growth. I mean, you have to grow leaders at the same rate you want your company to grow. I know when I graduated from college and got my first job, the company cultures were basically, there's your desk, go over there and sit down, shut up, do your job, and in 3 years, if everything's okay, maybe you'll get a raise or a promotion, and that doesn't work anymore. So you really have to develop and grow leaders, because as the baby boomers continue to leave the marketplace and leave their jobs, we have to have somebody to fill those gaps. And that if you want to grow. Another key to success is technology and AI. When the internet came on strong in the late 1990s, one of the things it really brought for businesses were the efficiencies. And when we see those efficiencies every day, when we get on our phones and order food and it ends up at our doorstep the next day. And I think AI really has that opportunity for a lot of businesses. And when we think about high cost of goods and high labor costs moving forward, I think AI has the opportunity to make every business more efficient. And so whether you're a solopreneur or you have thousands of employees, if you're not looking at solutions like AI to become more efficient, I think that's going to really hinder your growth and your profitability in the future. And as we're talking about AI and technology, I think we have to mention cybersecurity. As far as companies that want to grow next year, I know several businesses that were hit this year with some ransom attacks, and it was horrible on their businesses. And I know my company has done a couple of, lack of a better word, war games, where we've come in and assumed our server is all that information's lost, and we have to kind of figure out how to manage our business without all that information, and it helped us build different layers of protection. And I think that cybersecurity is something every business needs to look for. And in the old days, the old saying was, you had to have businesses needed these top advisors around them at all times, the accountants, the attorneys, the bankers, and I wholeheartedly agree that still needs to be the case. But I think your IT professionals need to be in at that table as well, because this technology these days runs all of our businesses, and so it's extremely important. Some final thoughts. After a challenging 5-year period, businesses are looking at growth for 2025. So are you ready for that growth is the question. We're looking at stronger profits. Most successful businesses will manage those COGS and labor expenses. One thing you don't want to do is grow broke. and a renewed focus on really building leaders within our businesses. I thank you very much and have a great 2025.
Final guest today, William R. Emmons, PhD. He's an economic consultant and adjunct lecturer, and he lectures at Washington University. And his bona fides include 30 years as an economist, 27 with the Federal Reserve here in St. Louis. He's going to break it all down, especially we're all looking at those rates, aren't we? Here's Bill Emmons.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Mitch. So I'd like to reemphasize, as Bob and Ron said, it's really important that people are feeling good, the markets are strong, animal spirits are out in force, small stocks have performed well, bank stocks have performed well. Those are absolutely important determinants of economic activity. Much more difficult to measure and really, sometimes very volatile. So what I want to focus on are more of the measurable, tangible things that we can probably be looking forward to in the next couple of years. And so I'm going to call this the economics of Trump 2.0. I have no disclosure, so these are my views. So first I want to look a little bit back at Trump 1.0 and use that as a template to think about how this next four-year period might play out. So as I say, I can't really capture animal spirits and the business confidence, which I think will pop as it did last time in 2017. But in terms of policies, actual tangible policies, the dominant policies, I think, were the tax cuts that in 2017 really hit in 2018. There was somewhat higher spending that, of course, really accelerated during COVID. There were some tariffs put in place in 2018. There was a trade war in 2018 and extended into the current administration. And as you know, tariffs were not all rolled back under the Biden administration. There was a slowdown on immigration. The policies were not as widespread as are being talked about right now, but it's very clear that there was some slowdown in foreign-born labor. So the outcomes, I actually was surprised when I went back and looked at this. There really was not much change. You could not look at the major economic variables in that period and say that there were big changes for better or for worse. And that's true of economic growth, and I'll show you some information on this. It's true of inflation, also true of the fiscal outlook, that is the budget situation and the accumulated debt, until COVID hit. In 2020, of course, everything went off the rails. So then the second piece is I want to talk about, well, what's Trump 2.0 going to look like? From what we've heard, tax cuts are on the agenda. Bob talked about it. Ron talked about it. In terms of spending, Elon Musk may or may not be successful. I think it's quite, you should be very skeptical that he'll be able to achieve the really large numbers of cuts that they're talking about. Anybody who's looked at the budget knows that a lot of it is just off limits. It's automatic. And the amount of potential cuts are actually not that large, unless you're actually cutting into muscle and bone, and that is possible, but I think it's unlikely. There is the prospect of higher tariffs, and in fact, some of the discussion has been about significantly higher tariffs, maybe even across the board against other countries, and that would be a qualitative difference from last time. There's also discussion about a much more significant crackdown on immigration and some expulsion of U.S. resident people, workers who are not citizens. So what would the outcomes be? Lots of uncertainty, of course, but I would say, looking just at these policies and how economists typically evaluate them, again, the economic growth impacts are very difficult to project, so I would say probably not much change. even though you can point to maybe some positives, those animal spirits, maybe some deregulation that could be potentially beneficial for growth. But on the other hand, some of the policies I'm talking about could well have a negative effect. So I'm going to say, I don't know, probably not much change. Inflation, the pressures are lining up to be toward higher inflation. Of course, it's the Fed's job to manage that, and that gets, again, ties back to some of the points that Bob and Ron were making. The tool that the Fed would use if these inflationary pressures do start to emerge is, of course, higher interest rates or fewer interest rate cuts than would otherwise be the case. So if anything, I would expect there would be upward pressure on inflation, which would translate into upward pressure on interest rates. As for the fiscal policy, if the tax cuts happen, those appear quite likely. The spending restraints, I don't know. I'm not going to count on those yet. The result would be that the budget deficits would go up, and as you probably know, they're already, as someone I read the other day said, almost unbelievably large already, and so deficits would probably go up, debt would probably go up, and we're already on a fairly scary track as we look out to the aging of the baby boom. So I think it is a possibility, of course, hard to pin down how likely, that we would have a fiscal crisis of some sort. And what that typically, or the way it would play out in the United States, I think, would be long-term interest rates would go up. So up 100 basis points, 200 basis points, 300 basis points, something like that, which would throw a huge shock into the system. Now, that's not the most likely scenario, but that's the risk that we're running as the budget across administrations just seems to be getting worse. As these crises, the financial crisis and COVID, have caused huge increases, which then haven't been subsequently reversed. Okay, so here's kind of a scorecard for Trump 1.0 and 2.0, and I'll come back to this as I go through. So what was Trump 1.0? In fiscal policy, we had a larger budget deficit. I'll show you pictures of this. We had what I'll call a small-scale trade war. It was not a big conflagration, and we did have lower immigration. The outcomes, as I indicated, there was essentially no change in economic growth in sort of the trend rate. There was no or very little discernible impact on inflation, and actually the fiscal situation was not much changed if you're looking at the 2017 to 19 period, so just for the first 3 years. Then obviously when COVID hit in 2020, things changed quite a bit. What had been was calling a large budget deficit became enormous. We had slowdowns around the world, of course, in trade, exports and imports, and immigration just shut down completely. So we had a period of time when there was essentially no immigration, which in recent years has been quite important for keeping the labor force going. So here's some pictures of Trump 1.0. And so what I'm going to do is compare in orange those years against the blue line is the average of the 7 presidents prior, including Biden. I think it goes back to the Jimmy Carter era. So about an equal number of Democratic and Republican administrations. And so what was the average effect? That's in the blue line. So this is the ratio of federal outlays, spending to GDP, and this is measured as the change from the year before that administration began. And you can see not much change in the blue line, also not much change in the Trump first 3 years until COVID hit, and then spending went through the roof. And that, of course, continued into the Biden administration, which is actually in the blue line, that is in that average. Here's on the receipts side. Now here the tax cuts show up very clearly. Revenues declined significantly in the Trump 1.0 and stayed lower than the average throughout the period, including the COVID year. And the result of the deficit, which is just spending revenues minus spending, it was already, this is my point, that the deficit was already somewhat large in 2019 because of the tax cuts. And then as COVID hit, the deficit became enormous. So what about that trade? This is an economic analysis. Now there's been time to think about what are the impacts of tariffs. So this is a study, and it's cited there at the bottom of the page, of 2018. So these are the short-run effects of the tariffs that were imposed. And the columns are, on the left, the revenues that the government collected. These are all in billions of dollars. So $35 billion were collected in tariffs. Second column is the value to U.S. producers. So the fact that U.S. producers who were behind that tariff wall were able to sell more than some of the imports that were substituted. The third column is the cost to U.S. consumers because prices went up. Not only would an imported good have to cover the tariff, but domestic producers were able to raise their prices to match the higher costs of imported goods. And so the net result was that consumers were paying for the first two columns, the tax revenues, the tariff revenues, and the benefits to producers. So the net result is $1 billion. Pretty trivial, sort of all cancels out. Now this is under the scenario if there had been no retaliation from other countries. But in fact, we know that other countries did retaliate. And so in fact, the bottom row is what really happened. The second column is where you really see the difference. When U.S. producers now, who sometimes export, have to face foreign tariffs on U.S. goods, the benefits go down. The consumers are still paying for it, and so bottom line, the last column, is that it's a negative. The U.S. ended up losing $7 billion as a result of these tariffs in 2018. But not a huge effect. I mean, this doesn't show up in overall GDP. So as you recall, this occurred in several phases. This is from that article. The tariffs in 2018 were imposed on washing machines, on steel, on aluminum, a few different rounds on goods from China. And then there was retaliation. And in some cases, foreign tariffs on U.S. goods were actually higher as a percent of the goods. And so there were retaliatory tariffs from China in, I guess, 3 waves, from Russia, from Turkey, from the EU, Mexico, and Canada. All those countries retaliated against the U.S. for the tariffs that we had imposed on their goods. There was also a complication. Just an example was that because the Chinese put tariffs on U.S. soybeans as retaliation for tariffs on U.S. goods, this 25% retaliatory tariff, the market shifted. So Chinese purchases shifted to Brazil, away from the U.S., and you could see it in the prices. The export price of soybeans dropped 74 cents a bushel in the United States. Export prices increased 97 cents a bushel in Brazil. So the Trump administration, through the USDA, created a market facilitation program to compensate U.S. soybean producers for the losses. And so the total, and this again is documented in an article that I cite here, producers were paid about $8.5 billion in compensation for the losses they incurred due to Chinese tariffs. The amount of losses, though, were substantially less, according to the Economist here. I mean, the program was based on some formula which wasn't necessarily pinpointing exactly what the losses were. So it looks like these compensation payments ended up overpaying U.S. soybean producers by $5.5 billion, which is not a very efficient way to operate, and also just looks kind of suspicious, like you're buying votes with these compensation programs. So that's what I'd call a political economy complication of a trade war, is if you do start compensating producers, it's pretty difficult to get that exactly right, and it's raises some suspicions about what you're actually doing with it. So what about the economic outcomes? Those were sort of the policies. There was little change in the trajectory for growth, inflation, or the fiscal outlook before COVID hit. Of course, COVID changed everything. And so I think to draw lessons from 1.0, I'm going to stop in 2019. 2020 was beyond the the expectations or the ability to compensate for anybody. So I'm going to just say Trump 1.0 ended in 2019. So here's the employment growth broken down by, in the blue line, people who were born outside the U.S., and the orange line is people who were born in the U.S. And these are percentage growth rates. And so what I've circled there is 2017, 18, and 19. And I think you can see there was a slowdown. Didn't go to zero, but it was a slowdown in the growth of foreign-born employment. So this was a small step in the direction of restricting immigration into the U.S. And then when COVID hit, immigration basically stopped. And so you had actually a pretty significant shrinkage in the amount of foreign-born as well as U.S. labor employed. For economic growth overall, the blue there is the economy, GDP growth change from percent change from a year ago under the Obama administration, and then the orange line is Trump, and that's Trump 1.0. I would challenge you to see any difference there. Pretty much the same, roughly 2 to 3% economic growth rates. And then, of course, COVID was a big hit. In terms of inflation, again, the Obama inflation rates were a little under 2%. Trump rates were probably a little closer to 2%. Not a big difference. And in any case, the Fed was a little concerned inflation was running a little bit too low before, so that's fine. So no real change in the inflation situation. So what about now looking toward Trump 2.0? If in fact you do have a larger budget deficit, in part because the the ability to push through bigger tax cuts probably is stronger now. There's discussion about a larger trade war than before, and the immigration crackdown is at least being talked about as being somewhat more significant than what we saw in Trump 1.0. So standard prescriptions, economic growth, I say that one's a little hard, but you would expect somewhat higher inflationary pressure. And the budget situation, which was already pretty dicey, certainly looks riskier. Okay, the trade policy is probably the clearest one where you would expect to see higher prices. And if it's a higher tariff and broader tariffs, that could in fact start to show through into overall inflation. I think the 2018 tariffs were too small to have made any real impact. And if anything, we are more dependent on foreign-born labor today than we were 8 years ago, 6 years ago. So a bigger crackdown on immigration probably would have a bigger, maybe even a more immediate effect on tightening the labor market, maybe putting upward pressure on wages, and therefore on inflation. So, notwithstanding that animal spirits are important, notwithstanding that confidence is strong at this moment, I think that the policies that have been talked about, what I'm characterizing as Trump 2.0, are likely to be more negative, more measurably negative, particularly on inflationary pressures, and then it's up to the Fed how much they want to resist that, and also in the labor market. I think this could be quite disruptive, given that we have a very slow-growing domestic U.S.-born labor force, and so cutting off immigration, and I guess I don't have a picture of it here, but the growth rate of the foreign-born labor force is now quite a bit faster, on the order of 4 or 5% a year, versus essentially no growth in the U.S.-born labor force. So this would potentially be pretty impactful on the labor market, small businesses, and the overall economy. Okay, so here's the kind of a picture of the animal spirits. The blue line is the Trump 1.0, and here I've lined that up with Election Day in 2016 because I think it was not widely anticipated that Trump would win then. So this is the S&P 500 subsequent to that. You can see, the 10, 12% rally in the weeks and months after that. And then the orange, here I'm going back. I think there was an anticipation in the market that Trump would win. So I'm going back to August 4th, and that's where the starting point is there. So this rally in the market's been a little bit stronger than even the one that came after the 2016 election. In terms of market-based measures of inflation expectations, not much change. The blue was the Trump 1.0, so this is a market-based measure of what people were expecting inflation to be out into the 5 to 10 year future. Drifted up a little bit just after the election in 2016, and going back this time a few months, a little bit of a drift, but really not much. Most of the increase in long-term interest rates that we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks is real interest rates. That is not the inflation component, but the after-inflation interest rate, which probably reflects some confidence. It also means that the cost of borrowing is higher for the government, for businesses. In terms of the debt, this is the picture of total federal debt to GDP, and then Trump 1.0, which I was calling 2017 to 19, and then actually 2020 is when it spiked up, did not come all the way back down under the Biden administration, and now is headed up again. So this is saying debt is growing faster than the economy, and given the policy proposals that have been put out so far, and no clear increase in the growth rate that would be able to support more debt, you would have to expect, and actually the CBO even before the election was projecting, and has been for a long time, that this trajectory would be headed higher because of the expanding costs and more or less stagnating revenues relative to GDP. So that, I think, is a worrying picture. It was worrying a year ago, and it's probably even a little bit more worrying today. So I think in sum, probably larger budget deficits. So we're talking over $2 trillion a year, 6, 7, 8% of GDP. The trade war is likely to be considerably larger than last time, with significant retaliation from other countries. The policy proposals are for a significantly tougher crackdown on immigration, which could result in a much, much tighter labor market. So the outcomes at this point, you'd have to say that, and I'm calling these unorthodox policies. These are things that sort of mainstream economics would say, don't do that, don't impose tariffs, don't crack down on immigration, don't have big tax cuts when you have a big deficit. If anything, these policies look likely to be more aggressive in Trump 2.0 than 1.0. And another significant factor, which I haven't seen much discussion of, is on many of these dimensions, the starting point is worse now than it was in 2017. I think that's particularly true for the inflationary pressure. Back then, as I said, the Fed was concerned inflation was running a little bit too low. And so a little bit of inflation from Trump 1.0 was welcome. This time around, inflation is still running too high, and we're certainly not back to 2% yet. And so these policies, I think, add to the inflationary pressures, which is why I say bottom line, I think we should not expect interest rates to come down very much. And you're already seeing that in some of the market action in the last couple of weeks, that some of the interest rate cuts that were penciled in for the Fed are sort of being taken back now. And so probably interest rates will come down a little bit more from the Fed, but depending on how things play out, you could actually, I think, see rates not going much lower than this. Thank you. I guess it's back to Bob. Thanks.
We're running very late. I want to apologize, but it is time to give out our attendance prize. Mark Baden's coming up. He is the Senior Vice President, St. Charles and Northeast Missouri Market Manager, and you're going to love him because he's giving stuff away.
That's right. Thank you, buddy. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. Thank you. Before we do the prizes, we have to absolutely thank our sponsors, Big 550, KTRS, News Talk STL, and the St. Louis Business Journal. We really appreciate your support on this event. Let's all please give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. All right, we have 3 prizes to give away today. I am not going to give away a chair like one of my peers tried to do a couple years ago, but Bob, could I borrow you real quick for a couple cards? Prize number 1. Who is this here? Corbett, no? Where's my name? I'm missing here. Corbett Grow?
Corbett Grow.
Corbett Grow with Anderson Technologies. We here? All right, Corbett, if you're here, we will meet right over there afterwards, and we got one more out of here. Thank you very much. Julie Durham for Success Ready Programming. I know Julie's here. Excellent. Congratulations. We have one more. Somewhere in this room, underneath the chair, there is a gift for you. So, I'm not kidding. Everybody get up, look under your chairs. We have a gift card under there for you somewhere. It's my favorite part to watch this. I know the general area. Should be over there. There it is right there. Excellent. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thanks, Bob.
All right, you got it, buddy. Yep. Thanks, Mark. And close up the show. Please welcome Christy Steen. Christy is the Christy Steen's the Senior Vice President and Retail Banking Officer at Royal Banks of Missouri. Christy. Sorry about that, I got in a hurry.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christy Steen, the Senior Retail Banking Officer for Royal Banks of Missouri, and I'm excited and proud to be here and be part of such a wonderful program today. Thank you first to all of our speakers. We greatly appreciate you being here with us today. Your insight is extremely helpful as we all plan ahead for 2025. Several of our team members worked really hard organizing this event. Debbie Brandt, Lisa Weeks, Katie Carricker. Thank you all for all of your planning and preparation. Also Also, I want to thank our team members who volunteered to help set up. We have Rachel, Jess, and Kirk, and Don. We appreciate all of you and your efforts today in setting up. And finally, we'd like to thank all of you for being here with us today. We hope you found the program to be informative and insightful. And to echo Bill from earlier, we do have a tremendous amount to be grateful for, and we wouldn't be the bank we are today without your support. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you all again next year. Thanks.
Well, as you've seen, many of you have had long relationships with Royal Banks. Those of you who haven't done that yet, think about it. It's a very, very special place, and we're really honored and excited that you all come out every year for the Royal Banks Economic Breakfast. Have a great day. Have a great business year coming up in 2025, and we'll see you right back here next fall. Thanks again, and have an awesome day.